Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. Those of us who were at the White House Correspondents Dinner on Saturday, still very much talking about what happened, trying to process it, and kind of reeling from the uncoordinated security lapse. I know people are trying to put it on the Secret Service. From what I saw, the Secret Service was very professional and did a great job, particularly the counter-assault team, the agents in the black helmets with the M4 rifles who jumped on the dais. They looked like alien superheroes. They were pretty badass. They are highly trained. They don't see a lot of action. They are a very important part of the Secret Service, and they really did just spring into action the moment they were needed. And I know I talked a little bit about it yesterday with Jimmy Fela, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate what I saw, what I experienced, and how it was the feeling of terror was so familiar. All of us have seen the footage from Butler, Pennsylvania, and saw how quickly our politics, our lives, our country can change in a moment, and how the president was spared. But, you know, the bullets that flew in Butler were very intentional and very deliberate and deliberately meant to kill him. And then, of course, there was Ryan Ruth, who was the deranged attempted assassin who tried to kill the president on the golf course in Florida. There have been other thwarted attempts to kill the president, and now what we saw on Saturday. And we remarked a couple things. One, as you might have known, seeing me on The Five or on Gutfeld or talking about it on X, we checked into the Hilton late. That was a late in the day change because of rain, protesters, and convenience. We were able to book a room, have stayed at the Hilton every other time I've been to the Correspondents' Dinner. This is the fourth administration where I have witnessed the dinner with the president in the room. And it was by far the most lax security of any one of these dinners where the president has been in attendance, which I thought was unusual given the fact that the president has survived attempted assassinations, multiple. So given that, it was a little weird that there weren't more law enforcement dogs. There weren't more layers of security. We didn't have our ID checked. My fiance did not have a ticket to the dinner, and we got into the Fox party with no problem. We were able to access the lower floors of the hotel. And, we're finally in the ballroom. The honor guard, the military band plays the national anthem, the Joint Military Honor Guard brings in the colors. It's always a beautiful moment, no matter what your politics are, to sing the national anthem with the president in the room. That there is something very special about that. The first time that happened to me, I was the summer before my senior year in high school. I was a U.S. Senator from Oregon for Girls Nation, where, Girls Nation takes place in Washington, D.C., and we went to the White House lawn, and, the national anthem played with George H.W. Bush, and it was an incredible moment that really ignited a new level of patriotism in my heart. And I felt the same thing being in the presence of the president. I felt the same thing with Presidents Biden and Clinton and Obama as well. Like, there's something very special about it. There's something very American about it. And you feel safe. That safety was shattered almost immediately. We were all sitting there making lighthearted small talk. I was at a table with my Daily Mail companions, and we heard something outside. And it's hard, like, memory and shock don't always couple neatly when you are trying to piece together what happened in a moment where all your senses became very, very aware. So from memory, I think that I heard like plates smashing, what sounded like a drum playing, because at first I thought it was a military drum and an extension of some sort of a military musical interlude. And then, having had firearms experience, I recognized it as gunshots. And, that made me tighten and made me instantly very, very alert. And this happened within seconds. And then all of a sudden, as soon as the agents burst into the room and down the main aisle of that massive ballroom, where the dais is on a stage with the president, the first lady, the vice president, and the members of the White House Correspondents Association. And as soon as the agents burst in and told us to get it down, I knew there was a shooting. And I was just trying to figure out if the shooting came where I thought it was, right outside the doors of the ballroom, very close to where we were sitting, and it was. I was worried that was happening inside, and I was worried that the president had been shot already. So we were all down on the ground. And in that moment, I looked over and I saw a woman who was kind of standing up, videoing everything. And I was like, I don't feel the need to do that right now. What's really important for me is to stay calm, stay covered, and preserve my own life until whatever danger was happening passed. And it was very interesting because it's almost impossible to grasp how much time has passed. And I don't know if we were under the table for 5 minutes or 20 minutes. No one said anything for a long time. And then people slowly started to emerge from under their tables and talk to one another and figure out, piece together what was happening. I had texted my fiance and my brother and let them know that I was under the table. They both had no idea what was going on because the TV that was playing the video, but not audio of the Correspondents' Dinner, so they didn't hear gunshots in the bar in the same hotel. The feed was interrupted. So they all just went back to kind of talking amongst themselves at the bar. So when I was texting my fiance, I'm under the table, we're okay, what happened? He had no idea. My brother had no idea because they had pre-recorded the Correspondents' Dinner. They were going to watch it later. And my brother's like, my sister's under a table. What is going on? And it took a while. It was very interesting because there was a reporter from MS Now who kept saying they shot the shooter. He's been killed. I had immediately texted Jimmy Fallon and his senior producer or his executive producer, Vic. They were on the red carpet. And I was like, what did you hear? What happened? And Vic was the one who gave me the most accurate account of what happened. He said, there were gunshots. Everyone started pushing each other from where he was near the red carpet, trying to shove each other out of the way to, climbing over tables and chairs and other humans to get out of that situation. And they said, all clear, the shooter is in custody. And so when there were people from MS Now saying the shooter's dead, I was like, really? Because, someone who was in even closer proximity to the shooter, to where that happened, said that, a law enforcement officer said the shooter was in custody. So we're trying to piece everything together. Everyone was scared and anxious and in shock, and there was a great deal of uncertainty. I've been in situations like that before, and I have learned that it is best to remain calm and kind of still and assess the situation until you know what your next move is going to be. So our next move was to go in the hallway and find Jimmy Fallon and figure out what happened from his point of view. He was already in the dinner. He talked about yesterday that he found a pillar to get behind and take cover, and that he was actively hugging 3 Ecuadorian waitresses, which I thought was very chivalrous of him. I wonder if they were his human shield. They might have been, but love wins. Love always wins. We know that. I found Jimmy. I found Harris Faulkner. I found several other Fox News producers and reporters, and they were all just trying to access a camera so they could talk about what happened. Security had kicked everyone off the red carpet, understandably so, and sent them outside. So they were all waiting in the rain. So it was, there were some very difficult moments. The control room in New York was abuzz, and they were trying to get reporters seated and settled. They called Kevin Corke back. He was in New York. He had been part of the big weekend show. He was quarterbacking the coverage from New York and did a fantastic job. But and I don't know how long the interim was until we knew what happened, but it felt like a very long time. And then Jia Jiang from CBS News, who is the president of the Correspondents Association, she came out and said, the program is going to resume shortly. And one of my editors at the Daily Mail and I looked at each other and we're like, no, it's not. Like, the president was almost shot. There's no way this is going to resume. And our biggest fear was that whoever tried to penetrate the ballroom was part of a cell. And, we didn't know. I assumed that it was protesters who made their way into the ballroom from outside the hotel where they were gathered in a semicircle, waving Palestinian flags and ranting and raving and death to tyrants and all that stuff. And, pulling that stuff out. I assumed it didn't occur to me that someone else had done what I had done, which is book a room kind of at the last minute. And, that's what the shooter did. But we didn't know that the entire threat was neutralized. So I assumed that we would be evacuated. And it wasn't too long after that. It was within the hour that we were all kind of escorted out of the ballroom and into the lobby. And I remember being in the lobby, looking around and saying to my fiance, like, don't you think it's weird there's no security in this lobby at all right now? Like, and the lobby bar, they closed the main lobby bar that, has doors that shut it off completely from the rest of that main hotel floor. But the one we were at, Four Oaks, has a big half-circle bar that sort of juts out into the lobby, and we're all sort of around that, drinking the bottles of wine and champagne that we had all grabbed from the tables because we're great Americans. And everyone was serving each other from their different bottles, like trying to come together to be in the moment with each other, trying to comfort and process and do all the things you do when something like that happens. And I just remember thinking, like, we could be sitting ducks. And that was a feeling that was very familiar to me after the LA riots in 1992, because I remember thinking when the riots erupted and they went from block to block and they went down Hollywood Boulevard and they went down my street and they firebombed the car across the street from my house and looted the 7-Eleven and beat up the guy at 7-Eleven who, rang up my double gulp every night before I went to the radio station. That's what it reminded me of, because I remember after the riots looking around thinking, when is this going to erupt again? And that was the first time in my life I didn't trust other people, and I didn't like being around groups of people, not because I thought that everyone was going to just lose their minds and start violently rioting, but I knew it was within people to do that pretty quickly. And that was my worry being in that lobby. I was very relieved to get out of Washington, D.C., but we all know that feeling. We all know what it feels like to think, oh my God, they hit the president. They tried to kill the president, and they're going to try again because of the rhetoric, because of the agitation, because of the words that people in power, influencers, journalists, pundits use every single day to describe him. So here you have, on paper, a very smart, seemingly rational guy who is made so angry by his information sources that he took it upon himself to take a train across country to try and kill the president, as many members of the administration and cabinet as he possibly could, and whoever was in the room at the correspondents' dinner, because he said that anyone who was in the room with the president was complicit because he was a traitor and a rapist and a pedophile. And those are the words that are used to describe him constantly, every day, sometimes in jest, sometimes with utter seriousness. But the point is, he is described as being such a threat that people who are angry, people who are unwell, people who are deranged, they feel like deadly violence is the answer to their outrage. It is not. It never has been. It never should be, regardless of who is in office, how much you disagree with them. If they are from the opposite public party that you have declared to be your political enemy, that is not what a civilized society does. And you will see society crumble very, very quickly. It will happen quicker than you think it possibly can, because people like that will become more common, and the sense of unease will dismantle so much more than you think we are capable of losing, and it will happen quicker than you can possibly imagine. And it happens because, believe it or not, of people like Jimmy Kimmel. So he made the tasteless joke on Thursday night in his fake White House Correspondents speech about Melania Trump having, looking beautiful. She has the glow of an expectant widow. And obviously the play on words like the glow of an expectant mother, like the delight in losing her husband is so evident. And the anticipation of that is, produces so much preemptive joy that she's glowing. That's disgusting. And then, Kimmel tried to walk that back and say, no, I'm saying that there is an age difference. That's not what he was saying. This guy would be absolutely gleeful if the president were shot. And, he makes little jabs because his hatred for President Trump is more important than his love of comedy and entertainment, because he has ceased to be funny or entertaining. And his reason for being is tearing down the president. And if the president were torn down permanently through assassination, Jimmy Kimmel, I believe, would have a glow about him. He would feel a sense of relief. He would feel a sense of accomplishment, because maybe his words were just part of the foundation where a building of hatred was assembled in the mind of the shooter who took a train intent on killing the president and as many people in that room in power as possible. Jimmy Kimmel is, whether he likes it or not, he is very much a part of that ecosystem. So it wasn't the joke on Thursday night. The joke wasn't terribly funny. I don't think it's a fireable offense. It was dumb. It was callous. It was dark. It was the fact that after we knew what that was, he repeated that joke on Monday night. That's what was so gross, because in his mind, it's almost like a form of self-congratulations. Like he was so proud of the joke and wanted to make sure he got it out there again, so someone would finish the job that Cole Allen only attempted on Saturday night. That's the point of telling that joke again. That's up to ABC. I understand the president feels very protective of his wife. I also know the president is very vocal. I also know the president is not trying to squash press or press freedom in this country, because every member of the press has his phone number. But I do know that he is protective. I do know that he is also angry. And I would be too if people kept trying to kill me or kept trying to goad people into another assassination attempt. And, I share some people's outrage on the right who say it's not a both sides issue. And Guy Benson really laid it out beautifully. The number of assassination attempts there have been against the president, or acts of political violence that have been perpetrated by people on the left. It is the language that they use. It is very intentional. It is meant to agitate people and to cause chaos and violence and as much damage as possible. And the penultimate for people who are stoking this form of outrage is the assassination of the president. And that is not acceptable. It is not okay. It is not okay if there's a Democrat in power to violence is not an answer when you are mad that the winds of politics are not blowing in your direction. Trump ran for president 3 times. He won 2 of those elections. He won in 2024 in part because of the assassination attempt in Butler. This does not bode well for Democrats and for people on the left like Hassan Piker, who are trying to stoke political violence. Shame on you. And the fact that everyone who has flirted with that rhetoric has not walked it back, it only says to me that they are going to push forward until that mission for them is accomplished. And, I put Joy Reid, Hassan Piker, Jimmy Kimmel, and all the other people who are filled with only bile and hatred toward the president, who are totally uninterested in ideas. If Jimmy Kimmel were so upset because he thought that President Trump were a pedophile and a rapist, why has he not denounced Eric Swalwell, who has allegedly committed sexual assault and rape against women? Eric Swalwell said a couple of years ago, believe all women. Well, if you believe all women, why wouldn't you believe his accusers? If you believe his accusers, why wouldn't you come out and denounce him? That is someone that was not only seeking the presidency, but also he was a front runner for the governorship of California, arguably one of the most politically powerful positions in the country. He announced on Jimmy Kimmel's show. So why hasn't Jimmy Kimmel come out and denounced him? Because he is a hypocrite. He is a leftist. He only hates the president, and hate has gone too far. And the fact that people like him didn't walk it back only goes to show how far they are willing to go to make sure that they button this thing up with their zombie army of unwell, violent, angry people, that they keep actively angry because it's good for business. Well, it's not good for the country, and it is not acceptable. And I'm not only here to save the world, I'm here to save the country, one ass hat at a time. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.